No more.
No,
we're done.
Different question.
No.
Different question on that.
I'm going to give you one more. This is what's going to knock your socks off.
All right. Okay.
Okay. There was another heavyweight meeting. Guys with suits came, and they said, Sam, we want to know everything you know about the assassination. You get hit with a high-powered rifle, the head is flying forward. I became a professional hitman. I just seem to be good at it. I watch you every day. I know your boyfriend. I know where your kids go to school. I know what you do every day. I know your habits. I know what your car is like. When I move on you, you're dead.
This is True Crime Arizona, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
We walked into his office in Phoenix, opened the door, and there he was waiting for us behind a desk, cigarette in hand, puffing smoke out his mouth.
I'll put this over here.
I have to say, going into this interview, I really had no idea what to expect.
I was involved in 19 murders. I did 22 years of my life in prison.
It might have been my most anticipated interview of all time, because he makes no bones about it.
I became the underboss of the most powerful organized crime family in the country at that time, and I became a more or less a professional hitman.
Did you want to be that?
No. I just seemed to be good at it.
I knew right away this was going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, my name is Salvatore Gravano. S-A-L-V-A-T-O-R-E. Gravano, G-R-A-V-A-N-O. But I'm probably better known as Sammy the Bull. And I'm not going to spell that. Spell that yourself.
A lot of you probably know of Sammy the Bull, or who he is. But the story of how he came to be the notorious Sammy the Bull, second in command of the Gambino crime family in New York, often goes untold in this much detail.
How'd you get that nickname?
How did I get that nickname? When I was a kid, my mother and father, we didn't have a lot of money, and my father bought me a beautiful bike, a Schwinn, very expensive bike, and he says, Sammy, we don't have a lot of money, take care of the bike, you get this one time, and that's it. I went to a grocery store, I went inside, when I came out, the bike was gone. 2 days later, my friends were yelling to me, down the block, near the fruit and vegetable store, there's your bike with 2 kids. So I ran down there, and it was my bike. I grabbed the whole of it. They were a little older than me, and they didn't want to give it back, and I fought with them. Across the street, there was a bar. It's almost like Goodfellas. There was guys hanging out, mob guys, and one of the guys came across, and he says, what's your name? And I said, Sammy.
They started chatting about how scrappy Sammy was.
You see the way he was fighting, the two of them? He's like a little bull that's stuck. I hated it in the beginning. My friends would tease me, you're a bull, all that stuff, but it stuck. Later on in years, when cops came looking for me, they were looking for Sammy the Bull.
Did you grow to love it?
I don't know if I grew to love it. I got used to it. Yeah. My name was Salvatore, but I looked like my Uncle Sammy, and my family, that's how I got the name Sammy.
Sammy will be the first to admit his run-ins with the law began young.
So your life of crime started in a street gang.
Yes.
How did you go from street gang to involved in the Mafia?
Well, I was dyslexic as a kid, and I had trouble in schools, and I got left back in the 4th grade. I got left back in the 7th grade again. I was in shallow junior high. I got caught playing hooky, and they brought me in, and he started talking negative about Italians, me, greaseballs, and I wound up hitting him, and I broke his jaw, and I was moved to another school. I got along good with the girls, but not so good with the boys. And I was always in a fight, and I would always fight more than one guy because they would jump me. And I already belonged to this gang, the Rampus street gang, and I would come back a little beat up after school, and they would tell me what happened. I said, I got jumped by a bunch of guys in school. So we would steal a car, get in the car, a whole bunch of us, the Rampus, and go down there and beat the shit out of them. So after a while, nobody wanted to have a fight with me or an argument with me in school, but I got bounced again and I went to 600 school. That's where all the screw-ups go. I think mob guys noticed me more from that fight originally. They got to know who I was. They knew when I got in trouble that I wouldn't cooperate, I wouldn't say anything, and even back in those days, you would get a terrific beating from the cops.
Then something changed him, the military. Sammy was drafted into the Vietnam War in 1964 and served in the military for 2 years. He told me he really liked it. He had fun, enjoyed his time, and was in the best shape of his life. But when he got back to the States, he had a friend whose uncle was in the Colombo crime family, the youngest of the 5 families that dominated Mafia activity in New York. At the time, the Colombos were in a mob war with the Gallows. Sammy's days of being a street gang member turned to joining the Mafia in the Colombo family. But eventually, Sammy the Bull would join and rise quickly in the ranks of one of the most famous mob families of all time, the Gambino family, and organized coordinated hits.
It's not the guy who pulls the trigger who's dangerous. It's the guy who plans it, where the person cannot get away from this hit. I plan it.
He emphasized none of this was ever on the fly or willy-nilly. He says innocent people were never hurt. These were targeted attacks.
I watch you every day. I know your boyfriend. I know where you go. I know where your kids go to school. I know what you do every day. I know your habits. I know how you react to everything. I know what your car is like, what your driveway is like. And I concentrate on all that. Then I think about getting away. When I move on you, you're dead. It's not just an argument, it's not just a murder. This is a hit, a professional hit.
What constituted planning a hit on somebody? Was it always a bad deal, or somebody didn't make good on their promises?
It was an order from the boss. They usually broke rules of Cosa Nostra. Rules are meant there, and the punishment is death a lot of times on a lot of the rules. Most people in the Mafia can kill. So how do you control 1,000 killers?
Cosa Nostra is another name for the mob operating in the U.S.
The fear of death. Rules. You break those rules, you die. That's the only thing that controls it. Fear is a very important thing. I look at fear in a different way. I look at fear as, in some circumstances, it's a good thing. But how do you capture somebody to like you, love you, and fear you, all at the same time? It's one of the hardest things you can do.
But Sammy says the Mafia life wasn't all bad.
So Cosa Nostra has a lot of beautiful traits to it and a lot of ugly traits to it. And I understand those traits, and I understand the situation. It hurt a lot of people, it hurt a lot of families, but it also helped a lot of people, a lot of places, a lot of things. I loved people in Cosa Nostra that have passed. I carry that heritage. I take pride in my heritage. So those are good traits that I think the Mafia has that nobody talks about. Those are traits that are instilled in me.
So you're very loyal to the people that
who I love. Who I love.
Is that a general consensus that people in the mob had? That same kind of mentality?
No. There's some guys who crossed that line and became serial killers, and we eventually killed them if we found that out. Because that's not what we are. That's
Very
not
strict.
what we do. Oh, we're strict. Yes, there's rules, certain rules.
At times, Sammy got pretty deep like that in our conversation and interview. He was incredibly good with names, memories of conversations even from decades ago, and information as a whole. I think that's part of what made him a successful hitman in the eyes of the Mafia bosses. He was smart and thorough.
Well, my 19 murders, 18 of them died. I can't overrule the boss. The boss is the boss. He says, kill that person, you gotta do it. On none of my murders did anybody get caught. So it's not just the hit itself, it's planning the hit, it's planning getting away, it's what do you do when we're done.
He says everything was as a pack, as a group. The mentality was you carry out a hit together and you all stay together, even if the cops come. He made an interesting comparison.
So when you look at the military, you look at things, the military, there's the first guys, the infantry, they're on the ground, there's people behind them here, there's people behind them there shooting missiles, and people on walkie-talkies talking to, or CIA, or SWAT teams. It's no different.
Can you give me that hierarchy of boss and what comes under that? How the hierarchy of the Mafia worked?
Yes. There's an administration, is the top. It's the boss, it's number one. The underboss and the gonzilla. Below them are captains or gabajins. Each one of those captains has a crew of made guys and associates. The made guys and above all took a blood oath to this brotherhood and this secret society.
So how'd you rise in the ranks then? What did one have to do to get to that next level?
I didn't do anything but be me. And I was trustworthy, I was honest, I was open, I was sincere, I helped a lot of people. And when I was asked to do work, meaning a murder, I did it. And I did it effectively. Even if you're the boss, if you make mistakes against Cosa Nostra and you do the wrong thing, then you can get punished. It's hard because you are the boss. There's other bosses and there's a commission. They don't want to let that happen, but it doesn't go unnoticed. The rules go both ways, but I didn't have nothing to do with that murder because of greed or power. I got made in 1976. In 1977, I was made an acting captain. So I had power, I had money, so it wasn't for either one of those. It was for other things.
And you made it to underboss.
Yes.
Very high ranking.
Second in command. There's nobody above you but the boss. And you got the boss's ear. It's you and him against the world. So it's not just that you have his ear. I mean, you're part of him.
By this point in our interview, I had a question in my mind that I wasn't sure how to ask. I'm sure many of you are thinking something along these lines right now. How is he able to live with himself now after the murders he's committed?
And we can use violence, but it's gotta be as a last resort, always. Keep that in your fucking head all the time.
Those were words from his mentor.
I learned the lesson that stuck with me my whole life. It may sound hypocritical coming from a hit guy, but there's many, many times I've tried to save guys. In cases I've done that. In some cases I had no choice.
So do you feel the 19 that died, those murders were justified? Because in your perception, that was the last resort?
Always, yes. Because sometimes I understood, we understand the rules. At the end of my career, I cooperated and left. That's a golden rule. I should die. I should have died. I should still die. You break that rule, you die. I know it. And I broke the rule. So it wouldn't be a shock to me. I tell my family now, if somebody came down and killed me, don't be mad at them. That's what they have to do. If they don't listen to the boss, they will die. And I broke a rule. Why should they die for me?
And you still live with that?
Oh, absolutely. Listen, I'm a gangster a long time, and I'll be a gangster until the day I die.
The Mafia certainly isn't around like it used to be, but it struck me that Sammy so nonchalantly says he just wouldn't be surprised if he was killed any day now. That order would likely have to come from associates of famed former Gambino family mob boss John Gotti. Sammy and Gotti were quite literally thick as thieves together.
Did you kill anybody above you to get higher up?
No, we killed Paul Castellano at one point. He was the boss of bosses. He was above me, way above.
It was December of 1985. At the time, Paul Castellano was boss of the Gambino family. John Gotti and Sammy the Bull planned and executed Castellano's death. Hitmen were waiting with guns outside the Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan. Castellano and his driver pulled up and were shot dead very publicly. Their bodies on the ground on the busy New York City street. John Gotti was now the boss and quickly earned the nickname the Dapper Don. He was known for a lavish lifestyle, high-end suits, big parties, and many illegal business dealings. He was known as one of the more flamboyant mob bosses in history. He also gained the nickname the Teflon Don. Why? Because he was more or less invincible and kept escaping time behind bars. According to the FBI, there was a string of highly publicized acquittals for John Gotti, much of that due to Mafia witness intimidation and jury tampering. Eventually, FBI agents wiretapped conversations in the Gambino family, building a case against Gotti. In those FBI tapes, he confessed and talked about several murders he was responsible for.
We want to know what you know.
And then Sammy the Bull turned on him too and became a government informant, ratting Gotti out. On April 2nd, 1992, Gotti was convicted on 13 counts, including for ordering the murders of Castellano and his driver, Tom Bellotti. In 1994, Sammy was released from prison early and put into the witness protection program, where they moved him to Arizona. Witness protection wasn't for Sammy, so he got out but stayed living in Arizona. Just because John Gotti was behind bars didn't mean he was powerless.
And John Gotti, you worked with him a lot.
Oh, yeah.
But didn't he order a hit on you in Arizona?
Yes.
How did you escape that?
Well, the guys who were on it, one of them was in my crew. And they found me. It took a while, and they found where I was working. And he said to the guy who didn't know me, he was supposed to be the shooter. He said, we'll go together. And the guy who was with me said, no, I'm not going to go near him. I'll guarantee you he's got a gun, and I'm telling you he won't run. He'll go for the gun, and he'll come at us. He'll try to kill us. I know him. I did things with him. When he tells him that, the other guy got a little shook up and said, well, fuck it, I'm not going to go near him either. And I always have myself in position that I would have the last look, so to speak. I am a hit guy. And they knew that and said, this is dangerous. Unless we catch him completely off guard, we're not making this move. And eventually I got arrested in Arizona and went to prison. And that was that.
Sammy just couldn't escape a life of crime.
Salvatore Gravano went before a judge this morning to plead guilty to the crimes.
In June of 2001, Sammy pleaded guilty to charges he masterminded an ecstasy ring that sold the drug from Arizona to New York. But this time, it was a family affair. Sammy and his son, with his ex-wife and daughter involved too, ended up growing into one of the largest dealers of ecstasy pills in Arizona, selling up to 25,000 pills a week, making more than $300,000 a week. He pleaded guilty to 10 counts and was sentenced to 20 years in prison without parole. Sammy's son was sentenced to 9.3 years in prison, and Sammy's ex-wife and daughter both got probation. Just before Sammy was headed back to life behind bars, John Gotti died in prison in June of 2002. Quite simply, Sammy told me it was so stupid he got involved in the ecstasy ring at all. Had he served the full 20 years, he would have just recently been getting out of prison, but he was let out early in 2017.
Do you consider yourself a bad guy?
No, I don't. I really don't. I consider myself a tough guy, that I've come through a tough life. People will say things now when they hear this maybe that he's a killer. I went in the army, and if I would have been shipped to Vietnam, I would have killed people. And what they told us back then is that the communists are coming to this country and they were going to rape your mother and your sisters and this and that and the other thing, and you were stabbed in the back, and they were teaching you to kill and hate. Do I hate the military? No. But that was what you were supposed to do. In Cosa Nostra, the Mafia, is what I was supposed to do. And I did it efficiently, and I did it well. And that's probably why I was called so many times.
Do you still consider yourself dangerous?
Dangerous? I have a split personality. I'm two people. On one side, I'm a lion. I'm tame. I'm more like a big pussycat. But don't underestimate, I could bite. And I will. If you came to hurt my family or did something like that, I could kill in the blink of an eyelash. I would be a phony to say I can't do it. Or and I'm not a phony. I could kill. I'm a hit guy all my life. I would be a hypocrite to say no. I found God, I found this, I found that, I can't do it. I could. I've done it over and over again. But it would take an extreme thing for me to do it. I don't want to. And I belong to nothing.
Do you have remorse in those incidents when you see somebody die?
I don't know if you call it remorse. I don't know what you'd call it. It's ugly. And what I really see is, if I go to your funeral, I see your family. You're dead in the box. I see your family, the damage that it did. It hurts people who are alive. It has no effect on him no more. It's lights out when you die. I don't care how you die, it's lights out. Once you're dead, you're dead. There's no pain, there's no suffering, there's no nothing. But it does affect other people. That bothers me. And I know the seriousness of it because of that. But that doesn't take away from what you did to become dead. If you came running in here right now while we're doing this interview, broke in and shot somebody to get into this room and open this door, I'm gonna kill you. You think I'm gonna have remorse for you? I don't give two f***s about you. I'm not gonna have no sympathy to you whatsoever. And I'm not gonna go kill some innocent man or woman or anything. So remorse comes hard for me. I feel more if I insult you or hurt you with my mouth in some way. If I could see it in your face, I hurt you, I really have remorse for that. I'm not sorry, I'm really, really sorry. I don't know how to beg you for your forgiveness, that what I did and said. Once I said it in a video that I made. And once I love you, I'll always love you. It's not a simple answer. I know people would want to hear, yeah, say you have remorse. And I could easily say that. but I would be lying. And when I get up, I got to look at myself in the mirror and say, yeah, great act, bro.
And that's just not you.
No, it's not me. If you don't like me, don't like me. If you love me, love me. If you hate me, hate me. That's on you. I know what I am. I can live with myself because I know what I am. I know when I did ugly things.
It might sound weird to hear this coming from me, a journalist who interviews all kinds of people and a lot of bad people. Here I am sitting across from a guy who is telling me about how he murdered people for the Mafia. And yet Sammy is pretty likable. He was certainly entertaining, but I think what made this interview different is how much ownership he takes of his life and crimes. He makes zero excuses, and I think that's why he has a fair amount of fans nowadays. But he was funny, kind, and you could tell he has a huge heart for those who matter to him, who are a part of his life. I really gotta say, I liked him. And it seems in this day and age, other people do too.
When I go to the gym, I'm always looking a little bit behind me, not because I'm going to get shot, because I want to hold the door for somebody. I don't want to just open the door and just walk in and it closes right in their face. I'm courteous with people. I'm a people's person. I talk to everybody. You know, I think when I move into this office and there's other offices, or I moved into an apartment, I think there's people say, oh my God, that's Sammy the Bull, here goes the neighborhood. But before I leave the neighborhood, people come over to me and people blow their horns and wave to me. So at first I think they're a little afraid of me, but after a while they talk to me. They all know my dog Lily because she helps me make friends, because she runs to everybody and licks everybody and says hello to everybody. You saw her. You do it 2 minutes. It's hard not to like that dog. So, and they all call it, Sammy, where's Lily? There she is. So, I have a good life. I go forward. I do the right thing. They like me because of my honesty and sincerity. When I say something that's ugly, I'll say it. I'll say why. I'll say how I felt, you know, and why I feel that way. I own it. You know, I don't back away from it.
His dog Lily was so sweet to me and Sergio, and she was so well behaved. She sat and watched most of our interview.
To sit there for 6-8 months, especially
now,
when Neil was
Sammy
alive,
spends most of his time working on his own podcast called Our Thing, detailing mob stories. He's also gotten pretty big on YouTube and social media.
I knew it was inevitable. I knew it was going to happen.
Sammy was so forthcoming with me and Sergio. He started letting us in on other mob secrets and dealings that we didn't expect him to talk about.
Look, I'm going to give you one more example. This girl's got more ammunition. They're going to say, Sammy, what happened? How did she get all this information out of you? I said, she's pretty gorgeous. I couldn't stop talking. Now, if you get a raise for this interview, I get 10%.
I wish I was getting a raise for this interview.
I'll preface what he's about to talk about with this. I at first thought some of this was kind of too good to be true, like it has to be exaggerated or too far-fetched, because it's no doubt fairly salacious. But after I interviewed one of the vice presidents at the Mob Museum in Las Vegas and actually visited the museum myself for research and to learn about its history, some of this was brought up and mentioned as part of Mafia history, with parts still a mystery. These conversations between Sammy the Bull and the United States government took place while he was in the Witness Protection Program, and some of these details he's never revealed publicly before.
I'm going to give you one more, and this one's going to knock your socks off.
All right.
Do you have socks? No.
No, but they'll be off.
All right, later on when you have socks on.
Okay.
Okay. There was another heavyweight meeting, and guys with suits came down, and they said, Sammy, we want to know everything you know about the assassination of Kennedy. You want to know what I know? I wasn't there. Sammy, you know what we mean. We want to know what you know. I said, you know, I would love to ask you guys what you know. Because I know one thing. There was a guy in a building, Lee Harvey Oswald, whatever his name was, who shot him in the back of the head. Now, you guys know I'm a hit guy, right? Yeah, of course. I know one thing, I can guarantee you. You get hit with a high-powered rifle in the back of the head, your head is flying forward. His head all of a sudden stopped. I saw a movie, a film. Some people took a film, and he went flying backwards. That tells me, as a professional hit guy, is that somebody on that grassy knoll hit him in the front of the head too, at the same time. He might have taken the first bullet in the head, he went forward, the second one hit him in the front of the head, and he went flying backwards. And I know one thing, that on that grassy knoll, there was no mafiosos. I guarantee you that. And there was a report that they seen people in the uniforms, police uniforms. So I would like to ask you, was it some of you sneaky ass, CIA guys on that hill? I do know that they were hated. Not John. John wasn't hated. He was liked. His father was a bootlegger. He was a whore master. That's all he wanted to do was do favors. But Bobby Kennedy had more. He with everybody. The Vice President of the United States, Hoover, who, by the way, was with us. He was with the mob.
Hoover was?
Hoover was connected to the mob. We used to fix races and give him the winner of the race. He was gay as a $3 bill. And he had the top guy who was with him was gay. He hated him. Everybody hated Bobby Kennedy. So I really don't know who did what. Jimmy Hoffa hated him. The mob hated him. I could personally name names in the Mafia who hated him with a passion. But I really don't know who pulled the trigger, who put it together, or who did what. I cooperated and I told you people the truth. If I was involved with it, I would have said I did it, just like I said whatever else I did, and I would have put it on record. But that's what I know. I think somebody was on that grassy knoll. That's what it looked like to me. And that's what I know as a professional hit guy. Getting hit, not with a pistol, that alone you'll go flying forward, a high-powered rifle. And then the guy gets shot in a police station by a guy who's hooked up with the Mafia. And 18 or 19 people died after that. Investigators, reporters, everybody. So I don't know, it seems very confusing. It seems like there's a lot of people who were nervous and wanted to shut this thing down. So I really can't answer your questions. They stood up. They said, this meeting is over. Get all of the notes, any notes, and destroy them. We were never here. And left.
They said that to you?
Yes.
I know that is a lot to unpack. Even going back over that part in our interview, I had to listen to that chunk of interview a few times. It's obviously Sammy's take on a lot of that, but there's certainly interesting detail about massive United States historical figures and events that I hadn't heard or didn't know. It definitely makes you think. After hearing it all, I, of course, as a journalist, wanted to ask some follow-up questions. That somehow led to another tidbit of important historical secrets.
No more.
No,
we're done.
Different question.
No.
Different question on that.
You couldn't even come over here and kiss me to get another word out of my mouth.
That's crazy. When you said the Hoover thing, I was just curious how.
She's going to try to calm me now.
No.
I love her already. I do like her.
How connected was the Mafia in general with the government? Were there deals being made left and right?
In my story about the Mafia, you're going to see that the government has been was connected with the Mafia for a long, long time.
Deep connections?
Deep. How about this? They came to the Mafia and asked for us, when I say us, not me, but the mob, to kill Castro. They gave us the contract.
So
We couldn't do it, but we booked it and we'll do it because we want to keep that tie.
the tie was important.
Of course, when you're a gangster and you're doing whatever, who better to be your friend? Politicians, judges, the government, the President of the United States? Who better? You know those people, you ain't going to jail that easy.
I think I was pretty naive to just how involved the Mafia was with quite literally everything before the turn of the century. Organized crime is an understatement. This was all so well coordinated in every way. The Mafia doesn't exist like it used to by any means, but as the world evolves, new organized crime evolves with it, and the fundamentals of it doesn't change.
Money, connections, power, and greed. All of those things control everything, all the time. All the time. There's always someone, some organization, it may not be the Mafia, it's always something that controls everything. That's it for me, kiddo. And your audience, I love you guys.
If you want to learn more about Mafia stories from Sammy himself, check out his podcast called Our Thing, which is available wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. A special thanks to the Mob Museum in Las Vegas for also having me and allowing me to learn so much more about Mafia history. True Crime Arizona, the podcast, is hosted by me, Brianna Whitney, and produced by Sergio Hernandez. This episode was edited by Shane Egan. It's a production of Arizona's Family, 3TV, CBS 5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.
This is True Crime Arizona, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.